and welcome back to Fatel Bella. I'm your host, Sin, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about Julie Dash, specifically her project, Daughters of the Dust. Daughters of the Dust is a 1991 independent film written, directed, and produced by Julie Dash, and it's the first feature film directed by an African-American woman that was distributed theatrically in the United States. And in 2004, it was the first film by an African-American woman to be named to the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. So Miss Julie Dash is a pretty big deal. So Daughters of the Dust is a pretty historically, culturally significant film that I feel deserves way more recognition, and people now should be talking about it because the themes still ring true today. As someone who is pursuing a big dream of being a director and whose career is in the creative space, I identify with a lot of the themes in this film about following your dreams, migrating, leaving the home, and how difficult that can be for either party. It is very impactful, even on a personal level, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. In Dash's words, it's a film about a family on the eve of their migration north and of the women of the family who are deciding who goes and who stays. It was indoctrinated in the National Film Registry for its lush visuals, gula dialogue, and non-linear storytelling. Linear storytelling is a very European way of telling a story, once upon a time in the beginning, and then it follows a sequence of events in linear order. But gula is more of non-linear storytelling, and the storytelling of a family, a community, a group of people and their history, their ancestry, and their lineage. And that oftentimes isn't spoken in a linear fashion. It's spoken by inspiration in the moment and in parts of whatever the community and family needs in that moment. And it's their collective it's their collective overview. So it's not something that can be told in a linear fashion. And she purposely structured the story to be told in a non-linear fashion to really emulate that culture, which I think she executed so perfectly, and it was chef's kiss. But the film opens on Viola and Yellow Mary, who are two cousins of this family that had left, and they are returning to aid in the migration of the rest of their family to the north. Viola is accompanied by Mr. Sneed, who is a photographer from the north, who is on a mission to capture in photographs the journey of the family as they are on their land and in their history at present day, and the journey to the north and then in the north. Viola is a devout Christian, and Yellow Mary is a little more free-spirited, and she's accompanied by her lover, Trula. Then we meet Eli and Eula. Eli and Eula are a married couple, and Eula is pregnant with a child that she conceived from rape. And Eli wants to know who raped her so that he can get his vengeance. She refuses to tell him because she is pregnant by a white man, and she knows that if he attacks a white man, he will be lynched. And she can't bear to lose her husband and also raise a child without him. And Eli is very upset because, one, he does want to avenge his wife, and also he's upset because his grandmother, the maternal figure in the hierarchy of the family, Nana Pietsan, he's mad because she is very rooted in the old ways of the generation and very traditional African customs and traditions and spirituality. There's this very powerful scene where they're talking, and he's basically telling her, why did this happen? If you were teaching us these ways, and apparently our ancestors are supposed to protect us, why did they allow this to happen? And she's explaining to him to not turn his back on her family, on his family and his ancestors and their way of life and African culture just because this one bad incident happened. It happened for a reason, and the child is not to blame in this situation. And if he forsakes his ancestors, he's forsaking the child, he's forsaking his wife, he's forsaking everything that they know and love. She's doing this in a way to comfort him and also in a way to reassure him to not completely abandon his African roots, his culture, and his ancestry. And that's a big theme throughout the entire film. And it's the overall theme for the film. It's this kind of weighing of the scales, this new way of life, of the old generation kind of dying out and this new generation being given life. And how can this older generation give the new generation the necessary tools to thrive, survive, and grow in the North without absolutely, completely losing sense of identity and self and their lineage. Throughout the film, Nana is trying her absolute hardest to, one, convince some of her family members to stay, and two, convince her family members not to turn their back on their ancestry and adopt Christianity. But it's very hard because Viola, there's two main characters that really root for Christianity. There's Viola, who is the devout Christian. She's a cousin that left and is coming back like a baptized Christian. She's definitely turned her back on African paganism. Hagar, she is the granddaughter-in-law, and the reason that she is in favor of leaving and migrating north is because she believes that just living in the country is beneath her. She wants to experience modern civilization, and she's also leaning towards devoting herself to Christianity. She's not as a diehard as Viola, but she definitely does see the parallels in Christianity and modern civilization, and she thinks those kind of go hand in hand, and would love, if she needs to pick up a Bible and like preach and be a devout Christian to experience the luxuries of modern living, she'll do it. And so that's a different perspective. So we have Viola's perspective, we have Hagar's perspective, and also Hagar's daughter is in love with a Native American. So now that's a whole different perspective. It's like there's a group of the family who's living for Christianity. There's a group of the family living for modern civilization and economic growth and prosperity. And then we have an individual who is leaving that immediate family to be with someone that she loves. And she's just not going to be physically a part of that community. She'll be part of another community that's not necessarily migrating north. So you have all of these conflicting interests, and it's like, how do we pay homage and tribute and keep our traditions alive when we also personally have aspirations and love interests and lives that we want to explore and lead? Like, how do we go about discovering and exploring that without completely abandoning our family and our traditions? I know, it's like, it's very complex, and the way that Julie Dash execute this exploration and the visuals that accompany it and the acting and just the emotion that each character brings to their plight is just so well done. And it gets the point across. Another thing that I really love when Nana is she has this tin can of memories, and that's her heritage. That's what she will pass down to the younger generation. So she's going through this, and she's kind of having an inner monologue about things that aren't necessarily part of their ancestry, but it is a part of their story. And it's like her mother's hair, if you look at some people in her community, it's the sun-dried skin from being on the plantation. And it's her and some of the community members who have like down to like their elbows, from like tips of their fingers down to the elbows. It's this like really, really dark blue because they are in a part of Georgia, I want to say. They worked on indigo plantations, which was a cash crop. in the South during slavery. So when they were slaves, they would dye fabrics in indigo, but it was a very poisonous process and it stained their skin. And that's something that's also going to die with that generation, because you also have to understand that Nana is one of the last living family members that was born into slavery. A lot of her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren were born free. So so it makes sense why her granddaughters migrated to the North. They have opportunities for education and careers, and they are living their lives as freed people. And it's not that she wants them to keep slave traditions, but she doesn't want them to forget that their parents fought really hard for their survival. And although they're thriving, she doesn't want them to forget where they came from, and not to carry it as baggage, but to carry it as like knowledge and pride, that we as people survived and we got to this point, and now we're passing on the baton, and you're going to get to an even further point with achievements and success and happiness and joy and thriving. And she wants them to hold on to tradition in that sense that, just like in the Barbie movie, the way that mothers stand still so their daughters can look back and see how far they've come. That's basically the idea that she's trying to pass on with, keeping the traditions alive and the Gula culture alive by telling them their family history. Please don't forget your family. It's basically what she's trying to tell her family who's migrating. And there's this very powerful scene of Nana and Yellow Mary, and they're basically talking and they're having an intimate moment about her experience in the North and traveling in their journeys. And she has this, it's not a rosary, but it's like a piece of jewelry. She's like, what is that? And she tells her, oh, it's like a saint, it's like the saint that protects me on my journey. And she's like, that's not yours though. Like that's Christianity's saints and all this stuff. And they have this very deep moment where Nana and Yellow Mary touch foreheads, and there's just this deep understanding that they worship different gods. She is very connected to her ancestors, and her ancestors guide her. And here is her granddaughter who isn't guided by ancestors but by a saint that they have no real connection with. And she's just very confused as to how a saint that has no connection with them is going to be able to keep her safe and guide her. And also in that scene, you can see it throughout the film, and I think Julie Dash talks extensively about the costume in a Vogue interview. I'll link it below. But the only person in any sort of distinct color is Nana. She's in this faded indigo dress, and everyone else is wearing white, which is also just a very non-verbal way of communicating that she is of the older generation. She's the last one standing. And then all of her grandkids and her great-grandkids are of this new generation of these freed people, of these very pure people that, come after her and will leave a better life than her. The whole time, this story is being told from the perspective of the unborn child in Eula, and she's basically counting her history and her family history before she arrived. It's really amazing the way that Julie Dash depicted this narrator, because she is this little girl. She's like a toddler running around, touching people, pulling on dresses, pulling on trees, and she has this indigo bow in her hair, and no one interacts with her and no one sees her, but she's in pictures and she's there's footage of her running around and stuff. The reason that she does this is also to really hone in the point that your ancestors are always around you. And that's why Nana isn't really pressed about Eula's unborn child, because she's basically telling Eli it's probably an ancestor that's going to come visit us and bless us and keep our lineage alive. And another thing I wanted to mention is also incongruent with the costuming. There are these striking visuals that she does to kind of drive the point home of this community and really show us and not tell us the way that these people live in the costuming and the landscape, in where she puts the actors in their relationship to one another, when she put Nana sitting on the chair and Yellow Mary kneeling in front of her in a position of submission, saying, you know, I did this and I went to the north and I experienced this life and I was a free spirit, but I also know that you are my elder and you deserve respect. And she does this throughout the film, and it's so influential and so powerful that Beyonce herself, in her 2016 Lemonade album and some music videos, she took inspiration from this film. And I'll also put that on the screen so you can see the similarities and where she got the inspiration from. There's been, throughout the film, there's been this debate between the old generation and Nana, and then essentially Nana pleads her case, asking her family not to go, not to abandon their ancestry, not to abandon their heritage and their history. In Eula, after they've had their large family dinner and the night before they essentially head out, she's basically saying, whatever we decide, we all just need to decide to make a change for the better. It does not matter if some of us leave and some of us stay, if none of us fundamentally change, protect each other. Because both her and Yellow Mary have been victims of rape. And the book I'm reading right now, The Color Purple by Alice Walker, super good book. I bought it literally yesterday. I'm halfway through. The main character, the main narrator, is also a victim of rape. And it's a common theme in older Black literature, women kind of recounting their experience and their suffering and how they had to still be strong because they are very prominent family figures in their families. And so she says, even if we go, we get raped. Even if we stay, we get raped. We need to really unite and protect our women, because we think leaving is the answer and we find out it's not. And we think staying and being our mothers and daughters and these maternal figures will keep us safe, and it doesn't. So what we really need to do is just keep each other safe, because there are obvious threats. White people are a threat. They were a threat when they enslaved us. They're a threat now that we're freed. Like, we really need to stick together as a family, whether we leave or go, whether we leave or stay. We really need to just commit to each other as people, you know. And that really does sway and move the family. And Nana basically says she's right, and I'm trying to just unify it the best way I know how, which is through tradition, which is through spirituality, which is through just keeping us all physically together and speaking and storytelling. But none of you guys want to listen. Can you at least just promise me that you won't forget who we are? And she takes Viola's Bible and she takes the hair from her mother and she wraps it around, and she just asks them, the same way kind of Jesus Christ blesses people, to please just make that promise on this Bible. And a lot of the family members kiss the Bible. Viola, obviously her dramatic ass, wails and screams and tell people to stop doing that, because if her ancestors die and don't go anywhere, they can't get to heaven, because she's a devout Christian. But at the end, she also succumbs because she knows where she comes from. And she also kisses the Bible and makes that promise that she won't forget where she's from. And that's basically how it ends. Some of them stay, obviously. Nana doesn't go. She's on death's door, and that journey will just, it's just not sensible for her to go. She wants to die on the soil that gave her life. Eli and Ula stay, and they're able to give birth, and Nana is alive for the birth, but then she dies shortly after. And then Yellow Mary also stays, even though her lover does go back up north, because she wants to reconnect with her roots. She thought she wasn't worth anything because she was raped, so she went to the north to find some sense of value, but she realizes she can find value and comfort and solidarity in the same community that she came from. So she stays as well, and everyone else leaves. And also Hagar's daughter, she received a letter earlier in the film from her lover, who is a North American Cherokee Indian, I believe. And he comes on his horse, and she gets off the boat, and they ride off into the sunset, and they live their lives. So yeah, it's a very beautiful story about your roots, not forgetting where you come from, honoring your family, and also committing to do better for yourself and for your community. And I think it's just so impactful, and it's very deep. And I understand why it was inaugurated in the Library of Congress, and very much so, very much worth it. I feel like I recommend everyone watch this because it is just an amazing film. Julie Dash really put in the work. Nothing was unintentional, and everything was just chef's kiss. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I put out videos every Friday, and I will see you next time. Bye.